SAJET's media briefing. I am Commander Kumalo. Thank you for responding so favorable to our invite. Please ensure that all cell phones are switched off or put on silent for the duration of the media briefing. I will first introduce the panel members to you and allow Director Maritime Warfare to present his briefing on behalf of the Chief of the South African Navy, Vice Admiral Mudibo. I have Admiral Wisner, Brigadier General Muli, Brigadier General Delfos.
First of all, I'd just like to introduce some of the members of the organizing committee, SAJAD, South African Joint Air Defence Symposium. I will give a brief history of how the symposium came about. I'll then explain what are the main focus areas, and then I'll follow up with regards to attendance in terms of speakers from Saturday. So also organizing committee, you can see there's 3 1-stars here, and we're across the services. Navy, Army, Air Force, okay? Very important, because remember, Joint Air Defence goes about being aware of what's happening. How do you know what's happening? It's like being an air traffic controller at Oliver Tambo. Unless I have awareness of what's happening in terms of the air traffic approach and departure lanes, I cannot then exercise command and control. Okay, so we must have awareness. Awareness is equally valid land as it is in the air, as it is for us on the water, above the water, and underneath. A good media plan which has good communications, good information transfer, and good momentum to generate interest amongst the general public becomes very important in terms of the discourse that you want to generate in certain strategic capability areas for defense. And one of them is air defense. Now, when you all think of air defense, you're all thinking about things that make nice fire and sparks and explosions that go from ground up into the air. But it's actually not just that. That's really just the tail bit that you are seeing. It goes about, how do I establish a network? How do I use that network to know what's happening around me? How do I effectively use that network to command assets, correct assets for the correct mission to achieve the correct outcome? That's very important for us. All right, and you can see for peace support operations within Africa, that is equally critical. Bangui, we want to know what awareness is there. We want to know how do we establish that awareness. We want to know how do we use that awareness for effective command and control within the Department of Defense for the correct assets to achieve the correct mission so we have the right outcome. So that's all important to us. SAJADS, how did it really start? It started in 1997, was our first air defense symposium that we held, and it was very successful. It was held at the Grintech Vehicle Test Facility in 97, and then expanded eventually into a SAJADS in 99. And because of the success of the SAJADS, it was decided to hold it biannually, every 2 years, and to rotate it between the different arms of services. In other words, each arm of the service, Army, Air Force, Navy, would be given an opportunity to be able to be the coordinator for the Air Defense Symposium. And for this year, it is the South African Navy, as supported ably by the Army and the Air Force. I would like to just say thank you very much to our organizing committee. Our organizing committee works very tirelessly in terms of generating the momentum. We have a website, www.sajads.co.za. Please go to the website. It provides excellent information in terms of the history, schedule, speakers, what were past SAJADS like, what were the focus areas, and what is this SAJADS. All right, so we have this SAJADS for 2013, and really what has changed between the SAJADS that was held 2 years ago and the SAJADS that we're going to hold this year. I think there's 3 important aspects that come to light. The first one, we know that the Department of Trade and Industry has issued a revised update of the Industrial Action Plan, which is the really industrial development plan, looking at different sectors of our economy and how can the correct policy formulation enable the development of those critical sectors in our industry for employment and to improve the industrial base. The second thing is we know that we've won the SKA award And between ourselves and Australia, we're going to be putting up the antennas to cover a huge area in terms of the square kilometre array. So from the Department of Science and Technology, there's a lot of momentum to develop scientific and technological expertise within this country. That becomes very important for us to have sufficient scientists, sufficient researchers, sufficient developers for us to be able to have indigenous capability in this country for the essential capabilities that we want. And the third aspect has happened, as we know, we have the first time on the African continent a United Nations mandated peace enforcement operation in the Eastern DRC, where we have the United Nations contingent, of which South Africa has supplied a battalion, which is involved in essence to disarm the rebels and to make sure that there's a negotiated peace. It's an enforcement operation. What does that mean for us in defense? It means that we must ensure that we have awareness, we have an ability to effectively command and control that awareness, and lastly, to the right asset to the right mission for the right outcome. So this year's real focus goes about how do we have an integrated joint air defense within SADC and the Department of Trade and Industry's Industrial Action Plan to enhance indigenization. Okay, now what does indigenization mean? That really means that a lot of the capabilities and the manufacture of those capabilities lie within our people and within our industry to be able to produce. That becomes very important in terms of what is the strategic direction given by defense to industry so that they can focus on the right aspects. So we want to ensure, A, within South Africa, which is part of SADC, you know we have a mutual defense pact in SADC. And the Mutual Defence Pact also says we have a SADC intervention force. That applies certain obligations with us as the South African National Defence Force, and it also means that we must have interoperability. So we want to ensure that this indigenization that we are driving is within the SADC community, so that whatever outcomes are achieved, we are interoperable. At the same time, we don't want to be in conflict with the Indigenization Industrial Action Plan of DTI, in terms of scientific research, technology and development. Our outcome really is, number one, at the symposium to ensure that there's a focus on the correct type of equipment that one would look at. Secondly, that the ability to identify critical skills, knowledge, expertise, qualification in people is developed, and lastly, that we do the correct type of training that then underpins the output that we want. From the delegations that will be there, we are expecting approximately 300 to 400 delegations. We are hoping that through the public discourse, which is yourselves as the news interface, that you will be able to generate enough discourse within the public domain so we can increase interest in this symposium. And it is not just seen as another defense force weapon type of symposium, because what we want is we want awareness. B, we want to have awareness, realizing the importance of certain strategic capabilities that we need in this country, and that those strategic capabilities are interoperable within SADC. And that lastly, that our research and development capability within this country is enhanced in those areas. So from a national security perspective, we have good support within the respective departments of our esteemed government. Yeah, within the Department of Defense, we work through Defense Foreign Relations. Defense Foreign Relations then interacts with all the defense attaches that are resident in South Africa, in Pretoria, for all our SADC partners. So that's worked continuously, and that's been driven very hard by Captain Les Hutton through Defense Foreign Relations to make sure that those links and those interfaces are not only strengthened, but there's a good information exchange. The bottom line is a UN-mandated intervention force with UN-mandated equipment, where the contributing countries provide equipment for the intervention force. What's important in terms of the SAGEs is to understand how do we generate awareness. You know, typically when you think of awareness, what is in the mind of the public eye? That's really important for us in defence, you know. So if you relate it to Oliver Tambo Air Traffic Control Tower, how do they generate awareness? They use radars. That's what they use, okay? And how do they generate command and control of that awareness to be able to effectively control traffic? They use VHF communications. And then they have air traffic controllers who are well trained to be able to execute control in terms of the right asset landing on the right runway and going to the correct parking bay. Now within the defence domain, equally important for us, but we are now looking not just at one single geographic location, i.e. an airport. We are looking at the entire sovereignty of South Africa. Number one, borderline security. How do I generate awareness on such huge coastlines and such long borderlines, land borders? So radars in itself are not sufficient. How do I generate awareness? What other type of technologies do I need to be able to increase that awareness that I cover all my borders? UAVs is but a part of that aspect, whereby I could use a long-range UAV which has on board the right sensors that is in the air long enough to be able to give me awareness of a certain area that is flying over and back, and transmit that awareness back to a control station for the control station to execute command and control over an integrated common picture that is understandable within the command and control of the Defence Force. ZA Link is but one of the transfer protocols, but similarly, you know, it depends how much bandwidth do I require. Do I do onboard processing at the asset and then transfer the essential data to the control station? Is the data processing happening at the control station? Therefore, a lot of bandwidth. Therefore, what frequency am I using? The higher the frequency, lower the bandwidth, less data, and so on. So, within the SAGET Symposium, the idea is to generate, that's the first aspect, awareness. How do I generate the awareness I need on a cost-effective basis? Because, you know, our Minister of Defence and Military Veterans must defend her portfolio in Cabinet with all other ministers raising national priorities. And we all know what those priorities are in this country. So therefore, she must ensure that whatever funds are allocated to the Department of Defence, that it's utilized in an economical and cost-effective manner. We could then start looking at technology demonstration models, and then from that, test the capability, see if it is exactly what we want before you go into production. So SAGET's type of symposium raises that aspect. You know, that's just on the awareness side. The next thing is you need to have effective command and control of what you see. How do I exercise effective command and control of what I see? How do I communicate? How do I transmit the picture to the decision makers that must make the decision? How do I ensure that if I have a mountain here, I can speak to forces on the other side of the mountain? How do I exercise command and control? And how can I be interoperable, Army, Air Force, Navy, so we all talk to each other because we're all on the same system, and it's not like one of the arms of the services are doing their own thing. In other words, we are completely joint. And secondly, how do I become interoperable within SADC, which is our partners? That's just the command and control. And then finally, what asset am I using to achieve what effect?
If you look at the previous symposium, how they assisted the Joint Air Defense Fraternity, I'll say firstly, on the R&D environment between the industry, the military industry, the defense, plus the foreign, those foreign distinct companies, was the cooperation that happens after the symposium. It's visible in various projects. That comes out of that cooperation of the symposiums, the previous symposiums. That's why we are putting the symposium on the ground so that we get answers of the problems we are faced with. That's the reason we are still continuing hosting this in the symposium.
As a result of past symposiums, it became very apparent of the need to have a joint communication and control system for the Department of Defense, as well as an encrypted South African National Defence Force only data link. So we know the Link ZA is a direct rollout of that. And we also know that Project Radiate and Project Bullet, which is within the Department of Defense that looks at command and control, is a National Defence Force-wide project to ensure that we have complete commonality across the services. And that came out of symposiums in 97, 99, and 2003. So I'm hoping that out of this symposium and out of the discourse, you see, within the public domain, it's very easy to negate defense. So I'm hoping that as you engage with the public and engage the importance of having awareness and engaging in the importance of effective command and control of that awareness through news, the news community like yourselves, that you can raise awareness and then you start having effective dialogue over these matters.
Well, can I please add also from history, the 2009 Symposium was just before the 2010 Soccer World Cup. And it was quite a hot topic at that point in time. We had presenters here from Germany who informed us also on what they did in the previous Soccer World Cup that happened in Germany. And that whole debate and a lot of the papers on that contributed to the success of the air defense component that materialized in the joint operational center controlling the whole security around the Soccer World Cup 2010. I think that is also one thing we can highlight as a positive outcome.